Hi guys, welcome to Short Skirts and Sarcasm. I'm Caroline, and today I'm going to tell you about all the books I read in April. This is my April wrap up, and April was a bit of a dud month. I felt a bit slumpy, and a lot of the reads weren't great, but I still managed to read 16 books, and I didn't think far enough ahead to make a disability readathon TBR because Jen Campbell was doing the disability readathon in April, and I am pretty sad about that. I should have had the foresight to have put together a disability readathon TBR, and I didn't. I mean, some of my books did end up being disability reads, which is great, but yeah, next year, hopefully I'll be more on the ball. And I don't really have stats for you this month because some of the books were just boring and I just don't have the spoons right now. So hopefully in May, I'll feel up to doing math. So as per usual, I'm gonna go through these in alphabetical order by title. If I have more than one book by the same author, they will be grouped together. So first I have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This was the first book I read in April. I read it from, I think, April 1st to April 2nd. I finished this in 2 days, even though it's 400 something pages. Yeah, it's about 450 pages. And this was a fun time. This is about a girl named Pippa, I think. Yeah, who, as her equivalent, UK equivalent of a senior project, decides to do some reporting on the disappearance of this girl named Andy Bell in her hometown, and to investigate if this guy, Sal Singh, really killed her, because everyone else seems to think that this guy killed her and she's not so sure. So she sort of dredges up the past, and it follows a predictable sort of thriller arc. This is YA, so Pippa is 17, maybe she's 18 in this. I can't quite remember, but it was a fun time. And if you read it as that and don't think too much about the ethical violations that Pippa is doing through this project, then it's fine and you'll be fine. Now, Pippa can be kind of annoying because it's there's a lot of telling, not showing, about how she's a straight A student, such a straight-laced good girl, but there's not much showing. She just kind of is this is how I'm gonna do things, and it sort of follows the framework of everyone saying Pippa no and Pippa saying Pippa yes. And so just for example, the first thing, she's in a meeting with her project supervisor, and the supervisor is okay, so the number one rule of this is to not contact the families of the dead girl or the guy accused of murder. And she's yes, I will absolutely not do that. And then literally the next chapter, she's hi, so dude, I hear that everyone thinks your brother murdered this girl. And he's why are you here? I don't like this. And she's but it's for a school project. And the entire book is just kind of like that. So she keeps putting herself in danger, keeps doing dumb things, and I just kind of want to shake her and be Pippa, no. Just literally everyone else in this book is Pippa, no. But if you sort of ignore that side of it, it's a fun time, and I will continue on with the rest of the series, as you probably know, because the sequel to this is on my May TBR. Next, I have A Spool of Blue Thread by Anne Tyler. And my previous Anne Tyler reads have not been great. I read Vinegar Girl and kind of hated it. And then I also read Redhead by the Side of the Road, which was much better. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And this is another book where Anne Tyler's writing is really strong, and I really enjoy her writing style, but the plot and the characters were meh. I didn't really feel I connected with a lot of them. This is an intergenerational sort of family drama, and I wish I liked it, but I just didn't. And just a trigger warning, in this, intergenerational, one of the older generations. There's like this 26-year-old man who ends up having this relationship with like a 13-year-old girl. And that did not sit well with me. Like, he doesn't know that she's 13, but it's still like an uncomfortable relationship from start to finish, and did not enjoy that. So I can't even remember what I rated it, but it was just so like meh and forgettable. I have Clock Dance by Ann Tyler on my Kindle, and I will read that, and if that doesn't dazzle me, then I think I won't read any more Ann Tyler books. I feel like I've given her a fair chance. Next, I have Baptism of Fire by Andrzej Sapkowski. And this is a book in the Witcher series, which I have been reading just as the audiobooks become available at my on my library app. And I am really, really enjoying these. Now, this book doesn't have a lot of plot in it, so I can't tell you anything that sort of happens because nothing happens. I mean, there's like action and there is some plot development over the series, but mostly it's just like some travel, some action, some sitting around telling stories. And so like, even though it doesn't really have a plot, I really enjoyed it. And I don't think this is like a particularly strong book in like the rest of the Witcher series, but I still enjoyed it. I think I rated it 4 stars. I can't even remember. It feels like forever ago that I read this. I read this like at the very beginning of April, but I had a fun time, and I will definitely be continuing with the series. So next, at the end of April, I was feeling a bit slumpy, so I turned to audiobooks by Agatha Christie, and I read 4 of them, and for the most part I liked them. There's one where I thought it was not good, but we will get to that. So the first of these is Dead Man's Folly, and in this we follow it's a Poirot story, and he is at a country home, and then suddenly the wife of the guy who's living in the home mysteriously disappears, and Poirot investigates, and we find out all the mysterious things that have been going on. I also read Peril End House, which is another Poirot, and in this we follow a woman named Nick who believes that someone is trying to kill her, and so she invests the help of Poirot and his kind of dumb buffoon himbo sidekick, what's his name, Hastings. And again, this one was a fun ride. I really enjoy the Poirot TV series, and Peril End House is one of my favorite episodes of that TV series. So I did know the story already, even though I hadn't read the book before. But it was a fun time, and I really enjoyed it. Next, I read Taken at the Flood, which, like, for the most part, was really good. It's about this woman who has a controlling brother, and it's kind of weird, and then eventually someone dies, and Poirot investigates, and we find out what's been going on. And there's a lot of mysteries, there's a lot of layers, and I really like it. But there's an epilogue, so if you ever read this book, just don't read the epilogue. You can live without it because it's terrible. Basically, there's like some intimate partner violence that goes on, and which we don't like. And in the epilogue, this woman who's been the victim of this intimate partner violence is like, you know, this is how I can tell that you, by assaulting me, have shown me that you really love me. And it's terrible. We don't need that kind of messaging. That kind of messaging is very bad. So if you do decide to read Taken at the Flood, just don't read the epilogue because it's not worth it. And then my last Agatha Christie was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And this was one of the books that sort of launched Agatha Christie into murder writing fame. And so I really, really enjoyed it. I think of the bunch, it was maybe my favorite, especially because the way it's written, it keeps you guessing with like everything the entire time. And so, yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Basically, Roger Ackroyd, this dude, dies. And Poirot was like, but how? Why? And at the end we find out, which is, you know, the way murder mysteries generally tend to work. Next, I read Disfigured by Amanda Leduc, and this is her like memoir slash analysis of her own disability and her own experience with disability. She has, is it cerebral palsy? I have already forgotten. This is sad. But it's also an analysis of the representations of disability and disfigurement in fairy tales. And I love fairy tales, and I also love memoirs, and I also love reading about disability because I am also disabled. So the more we all know, the better it is. So I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 5 stars. It made me feel so validated, and it gave me a bunch of new insight into fairy tales that I already know and love, and some that I don't know that well. And it just like made me happy in my heart. And I would strongly recommend that you also read this. This is one of the books that like was really big on Jen Campbell's like disability readathon. A lot of people read it this month, which is good because it's an amazing book, and I think you should read it too if you haven't already. Next, I read a NetGalley arc of Hummingbird Salamander, and there's not much of like the actual plot that I remember from this because I was just like, it was so weird and disturbing, like in a good way. But it was very strange, and I'm not even sure how to describe it. Basically, this woman gets a note that she needs to get a taxidermied hummingbird out of storage, and she does. And when she does, like a bunch of weird things start happening, and there's also a taxidermied salamander that is in this as well. And weirdly, I learned a lot about hummingbirds and salamanders, which was like not the point of this book, but sure. And I do have a full review of this that I will post a link to, and you can read it by yourself should you wish to. And another NetGalley e-arc I read was of Women in Salt, which was amazing. This was like one of the high points, along with I think Disfigured, of my April reading. Of Women in Salt is one of like the best books of 2021 that I've read so far, and I think possibly of my entire life. It was so well written, so well described. The characters were so well fleshed out, and I just loved every second of it. This follows a lot of different women in basically like North America, and some of them live in the US, some of them live in the US for a time, some of them were born in the US, some of them were born in other countries. And it starts with this woman, Jeanette, and she notices, and she is American born but Cuban American, and she notices that there has been an ICE raid on her neighbor's house, and the neighboring woman is gone. She doesn't know where she's gone, but then she realizes that her young daughter has not been taken by ICE, and so she invites her into her home, and that kicks off basically the rest of the story. And I thought it was really interesting in looking at the way different Latinx identities in the US in particular intersect and overlap, because you know, everyone always says like the Latinx community is not a monolith, and this does a really good job of really showing that. And it also reminded me specifically about like being Cuban American, etc., of the Wrong About episode on Elian Gonzalez. So if I can find the link to that, I will also put it in the description. So Of Women in Salt has now come out, and I would really recommend that you read it. 5 stars. It was so good. Then I read Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Live Ship Trader series, which is the second series in the Realm of the Elderlings mega series. I'm not sure how to describe that, but basically it's about ships that are alive, and like their figureheads are alive and can see, and can have their hair blow in the wind, and they can sort of sense what's going on in the rest of the ship. And so they are very prized possessions because they are rare, and obviously difficult to build. There are a lot of trader families in this place called Bingtown who own their live ships, and they're sort of like the trading elite of the town. And the Vestrit family has one of these ships that has just come alive, and the main character of this series, Althea, thinks that because she has spent so much time aboard this ship already with her father, that she is going to inherit the live ship to be able to captain and trade on it like she's already sort of been doing. But the family gives it to her sister and her sister's crappy husband instead. And I really enjoyed this. I know that some people have preferred the Farseer trilogy to this, but I don't really like Fitz as a character from the Farseer trilogy, so I was very into this. And it's also multi-perspective, so there's also like this pirate dude, and there's also like the main character Althea's like nephew who wants to be a priest but is now like on a ship. I mean, very little happiness is found in these books, but I am very excited to continue with this because I loved the first book so much. I think I rated it 5 stars. And it's a chunky book, but I managed to read it in only a few days. So I did listen to the audiobook, and I do speed up my audiobook, so that definitely helped. But I also just like was really into it. Another e-arc I read this month, also featuring disability, is Sorrowland by River Solomon. And I really enjoyed this book. I didn't love it. I thought that like the middle bit was like maybe a little bit too long, but otherwise it was really great. So this book follows the main character, Vern. She escapes from this religious cult compound while she is heavily pregnant, and eventually has twin boys. And it's the story of their survival in the woods as like the boys are growing up. And sometimes they're alone, sometimes they meet animals, sometimes they meet other humans for good or bad. And throughout this, Vern is also looking for her childhood friend, Lucy, who disappeared when they were younger. And she is hoping to find her friend again. And I've not really read anything like this book before. There's a lot of great character development. There's some great like nature description. There's some great commentary on imperialism, especially the way that the US is still an active colony. And yeah, so I like, my mind was like blown by this book. It was great. And there's also a lot of like weird body stuff that goes on. I won't like tell you a lot of it because I don't want to spoil it. It isn't like the main point of the book, but it's something that is like important in a symbolic way. So Vern's body starts to transform in kind of weird ways, and she's not sure what's going on. And so if you liked The Beauty by Elia Whiteley or Follow Me to Ground, then I think you would also like this book. And if you read Wilder Girls, which is like has a completely different premise but also has weird body stuff going on, and thought that like the way the weird body stuff was like handled and explained in that, because personally I didn't. I thought there was a lot left to be desired in Wilder Girls. But I think that this book, in terms of weird body stuff, is way better than Wilder Girls. So if you were left disappointed by Wilder Girls, I would recommend Sorrowland. Then next I read Summer Water by Sarah Moss. And this is a day in the life, slice of life, creepy Scotland story. So there's a community of vacation houses, and we go through and see all the people that are vacationing there over the course of the same day. And it's creepy and unsettling, and everyone is miserable. And I really enjoyed it while I was reading it, but it was not like memorable. And I did have the physical copy because my friend gave it to me as a birthday present last year, but then I gave it back to her to borrow so she could read it, and she still has it. So Then I read The Mysterious Howling by Mary Rosewood, and this was delightful. I loved it. Basically, these 3 kids, there's one in the tree. I missed him before, but yeah, he's in the tree. They were found in the woods of Ashton Place, and so, what's her name? Penelope Lumley, a recent graduate of, the school has a great name, the Swanbourne Academy for Poor Bright Females, is engaged as their new governess. And so she tries to sort of make them a little bit less wild and able to, you know, inhabit the indoors. And the way she like gives her time to these kids is really, really nice to see, because I feel like a lot of orphan stories are just like sadness upon sadness. Oliver Twist comes to mind. And at least the beginning of Anne of Green Gables, obviously for her it gets better. There's an entire series about how happy she is. But this was, yeah, it was just like a fun, cute, nice read. The kids are hilarious. It's illustrated, which just makes everything better. There are some mischievous squirrels. See, as you can see, these are the kids putting on clothes for the first time, and they do not understand how pants work. And so I have the second book in this series already, and I am so excited to read it. I'm hoping to get to it soon. Then for my feminist book club this month in April, we read The Northsmeet Murder by Frances and Richard Lockridge. And our theme this year is cats, and so this does have a sort of sassy cat. I wish it appeared more. It's there in the beginning, it's there at the end, but the middle bit is just kind of anticlimax and racism. So I rated this 2 stars because it was just kind of bad. Basically, the Norths, a couple, find a murdered body in their bathtub, and with the help of the police, they figure out who did it. And this has like Thin Man, Maltese Falcon, Dashiell Hammett vibes, but like I said, it's kind of just racist in the middle. So like, for example, there is a Japanese person living in, I think this takes place in New York in the story. And I think he is originally from Japan. He's not Japanese American in the way that he's like, in the sense that he's born in the US, but he like has an accent. And what the authors could have done is just said that he had an accent, but they've like tried to write it and it's really bad. And then at some point the lead detective makes a list of all the suspects and their motives. And for this man who like doesn't basically have any motive, has just put down like foreign temperament or like Oriental persuasion or like something racist. Basically, like, because this man is Japanese, of course he had a motive to kill the random dude in the bathtub, which like he doesn't. So no. So I'm not gonna, it's the beginning of a series and I'm not gonna continue with it. And lastly, another murder mystery. I read The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. So I had no idea that Richard Osman was like a famous person in his own right. I hadn't heard of him before this book came out. So I have pre-ordered the second one because this one was like fun enough. I've literally already forgotten everything, but there's a lot of layers to this. There were a lot of like different mysteries and a lot of red herrings. And so in that way, I really, really enjoyed this. And I also like enjoyed the characters. The premise is like, retirees in their 70s and 80s get together to talk about murder every Thursday, and they have previously been employed as like nurses or police detectives, or I think one of them used to work in a morgue, possibly. And so they're not working anymore, but they get to like discuss with each other about, you know, murders and murder mysteries. But then a real murder happens and they sort of enmesh themselves with the police, who like are not excited for like these septuagenarians coming in being like, have you thought about, but what about trying to do their jobs for them. But they of course help the investigation, and the culprit or culprits are unmasked. And this was just like a really fun ride. I think I rated it 4 stars. And I would definitely recommend if you just want a light, fun murder mystery. So that concludes my April reading, and I am hoping that May shapes up to be a better month because I had some real duds in there. But I will see you next time. In the meantime, you can like this video, you can subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on social media. All my links will be down in the description below. I will also include the links to any full reviews on Medium that I have written this month. Until next time, bye guys.